Hi guys, welcome back to another sewing tutorial. Today we're going to be making a beautiful long maxi dress with embellished fabric. So this is the sketch for the design, and as you can see the sketch is quite rough, but what we have is a long maxi dress which flows out towards the bottom and it has a lining, straps, and I'll just show you some of the inspo behind this dress so you get an idea of what you can expect. So just quickly I'm going to show you the kind of vibe we're going for. As you can see, these dresses are all sequined or embellished in some way, and I think the fabric that I have is going to work so nicely as a maxi dress. And as you can see, this example, it has the lining which comes up shorter than the actual dress, just to give that layer of transparency. So this is the fabric I have for the dress, and it's one I actually purchased when I was on holiday in Bangkok in Thailand. So I'm finally going to be making something out of this fabric, which is very exciting. And I also have this fabric, which is a polyester, and this is going to be my lining and my fabric for the straps. So I'm super excited to be working with this embellished fabric. I haven't worked with a fabric like this before, but as you can see, it's on like a tulle, which has then been embellished with sequins and beads. So we're going to have to be very careful when working with this fabric. It could be quite difficult to sew on the machine as well because of these beads. We're going to have to watch out for them. But keep following along to see how we make this dress and also pick up some techniques on how to work with this fabric. I have quite a lot of this fabric here. I've got about 2 meters, which will definitely be enough for the dress, as it's also a very wide fabric. And I've got 1 meter for lining because I didn't want the lining to be full length on the dress. I just want it to be short, so that this part of the dress is got a kind of like transparent feel, yet it isn't fully transparent, but it's got just the beautiful embellished fabric showing here. This dress is going to have a back zip, which will be very lightweight, and a concealed zipper style, as this fabric is quite delicate. It's going to just go straight across at the back and pretty much have a similar shape to the front, just fitted for the back. So it's going to look something like this. I'm keeping this dress quite simple in the actual shape because I think the fabric speaks for itself. I mean, this fabric has so much going on. If we have a very crazy design, I think it will ruin the whole look. It's going to be sophisticated and very classy, so let's keep it like that. We might have a side split, maybe, depending on how we feel closer to the sewing process, because this might allow just a little bit more room for movement and when walking in the dress. But I'm going to keep that in mind and see how we get on. Today for the dress we're going to look at some pattern making, and I've got some patterns from a dress I made in a previous tutorial, which is the red oriental dress. At the minute I've got my dress design which I want to make as one piece. Because the fabric has so much embellishment going on, if we cut up this dress into different sections, it's going to make it look messy and it's not going to flow as one piece of fabric. This pattern I have is already cut into 3 different parts. So what I'm going to do is trace this out, and then I'm going to remove the seam allowance so that I have one complete bodice piece without cutting it into separate smaller pieces. I'm going to start off quite simple, and I'm going to trace off these patterns and then work from there. Now I've traced out the bodice patterns, I'm going to cut these out and start editing them to make them into one bodice piece. Now I've got my pieces copied and cut out, I'm now going to look at where the seam allowance is, because I need to take this off because I'm forming them into one piece and I don't want the extra seam allowance, if not it'll alter the shape and the fit. So I know here I've got 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, so I'm just going to mark that in. I've added 1 centimetre extra on the zip side, so I'm just going to mark that, and then I'm going to mark my 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. I'm not going to worry too much about the top and bottom quite yet, but I've also noted that I shaved this slightly just for a better fit. I'll do that, and I do the rest for my other pieces. So the bodice front, again, we've got 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, and this is cut on the fold. And for this back piece, again, it's cut on the fold, and we have an extra 1 centimetre for the zip on the side, so I'll mark that, and then 1.5 centimetres. So next up, I'm actually going to pin these together as though they were being sewn up, so I need to mark correctly along the seam allowances. To help this work, I'm just going to cut into the paper. So obviously on paper it's going to look a little bit messier, but this is the idea of the shape that we're going to have, and we'd have this cut out again but as one single piece. So I'm going to edit this pattern and cut that out again. So I'm now going to trace out this pattern as this is what it looked like as one full piece. We can amend the bottom and the top as we get closer to cutting out, but for now we just need this kind of length and shape. And I'll just get my pattern master and just shave these corners, shave these lines in so it is neat. And this is going to be cut on the fold. Before I cut it out, I'm just going to add a couple centimetre seam allowance just so I have something to work with. And now I'll cut it out. Next up, I'm getting my calico and I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to have to edit this pattern slightly just to make this bit come out a bit more, so hopefully that's going to work. So I'm just going to add this bit in. And now I'm going to pin this down and cut it out. And just going to add a tiny bit in here. And now I can open this out and see how it's going to fit. Obviously this is a toile, so it is a little bit of trial and error. And that's fine because this is a toile and we can make edits. So already I can see here I need to straighten off this part. And I'm also not sure on this neckline. I think maybe it needs to be a bit more straight. And I might even possibly make it a bit lower. But the main thing we need to check is the fit. So that's the most important part. I'm going to fold these parts over slightly just so I can get an idea of where the neckline is going to be. So you can imagine it a little bit more now. Still need to sort out this line here. But yeah, let's make sure it fits. So I'm kind of just trying on this sample as best as I can to show you, but it is a little bit small at the back, like I can't feel them fitting together, so I'm going to add a few more centimetres to that. But we've made a start for the toile, and then we just need to edit that, edit this neckline, edit this bottom part and add in the skirt. So I'm going to add about 4 centimetres to this pattern. Also where this part curves in, I'm going to shave that off the pattern. and just placing my sample over the pattern, I can then work out where this line should be. And I'm also just going to shave this part as well because I don't want the back to be too low, so I'm just going to make this join up a bit better. In fact, I'm going to add 1 centimetre just because I don't want the back to be too low. And then I'm going to add a seam allowance around this, and I'm going to make it 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. So now I've edited my neckline and the back, and I've also added my seam allowance. I'm just going to cut out this pattern piece again. I'm just going to add another couple of centimetres just to make sure that my sample is going to be big enough, and I can always trim it down if it is too big. Now I've got my bodice pattern, and we're going to cut this out again in the calico because we do need to keep toiling it and making sure we get the right fit. And as well, if our fabric is embellished, this can be very expensive, so we want to make sure the toile is right. This is the new pattern piece. As you can see, it's quite long, so it's definitely going to fit this time. And we also have a little bit of extra leeway to play with the fit and make sure that it's right. I've just tried on the sample and pinned into place where roughly it needs to do up with the zip. So we have some fabric to work with here, and we're now going to start doing the skirt for the dress. Next, I'm going to trace out this skirt pattern, which is a pattern I used for a project a while ago, and I'm going to edit this pattern to use it for the bottom of the dress. I'm also going to remove the darts on the skirt pattern, so to do this I need to trace out the pattern how it is, and then I'm going to pivot the pattern at the point of the dart. The new line can be drawn in after turning your pattern piece. So now I've just closed up the dart because we don't want the dart in this design. And next I'm going to trace out the back piece of the skirt and do the same again with the dart. Next up, for our skirt patterns, I've just measured about 43.5 centimetres because I'm just going to toile the skirt in a shorter form for the lining of the dress, and I'm going to cut these out in the calico. I'm just going to fold this part in half so that it's a short skirt. I've got 2 pieces for my skirt back. Here is where the zip will go in. As you can see, we've taken out the darts because we don't want this in the fabric. Now I'm going to cut out the front for the toile. The skirt front is cut out on the fold. And now we have our front part of the skirt. I'm going to pin these together and sew them up. Next up, we're going to sew up the toile for the skirt, and then we can see how it fits. So the skirt is sticking out too much on the sides, so we need to just edit our pattern slightly and shave this in a bit more so it's more fitted to the body. So I've just added some pins here, and we're going to make this a little bit more so that it doesn't come out as much, it'll be more smooth. We're going to edit the patterns and going to measure 6 centimetres, as this is roughly where it begins, where we shave in our fabric. And then I'm going to measure 18 centimetres, and we can shave this in. and then we won't be using this. And again for the back I've measured 6 centimeters. Need to measure 18 centimeters. And just shave that off slightly. Then add our seam allowance. And I'm just going to trim these off. And then I'm just gonna sew this new line where we want the seam to be. And just do the same for the other side. It looks a lot better now, and now we can work on adding the top. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add in the seam for the top because I removed it, but actually I need to add it in, but I want to make sure that it lines up with the skirt. So now I know where the seam is going on the skirt, I can mark this in on the top, and I've done this by finding the centre front on both the skirt and the top, and I'm just going to pin them and line them up. Now I've got this pinned together, I'm then going to mark where I want to put in my seams. And now I'm going to mark this onto my pattern. Here's the centre front. Now I've got this seam marked, I'm going to cut this in half and add my seam allowance. I'm going to add 1 centimetre seam allowance. And then I'll do the same for the back piece. Now I've got my patterns. Now I'm going to look at joining the top to the skirt so that we don't have a seam down the middle, because I want the dress to be one piece. So let's try and work that out for our patterns next. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to tune in to part 2 of this tutorial so you can keep learning how to make the dress.